Two. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for tonight, September 26th, 2023. Before we get underway, our guest minister this evening is Tyson Knopfsinger from First Church of God over on Carter Road. Thanks for being our guest this evening.
All right, thank you. Yeah, before I start, I'd like to offer my condolences if we have any Notre Dame fans in here. All right, let's pray. God, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for this group of people, and thank you for their leadership in our town. Just pray tonight that you would fill them with wisdom, that you would help them to find unity, whether there's agreement or not total agreement, that you would just guide them along those paths. And I thank you for 200 years. What an awesome history and heritage we have here in Defiance. And just pray going forward that our best days would be ahead, and that you'd use not only these people, but our entire community to help us move in that direction. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Let the record show that all members of council are present except for Mr. Hancock. He alerted us last time we met that he wouldn't be here this evening. Do we have a motion to excuse him?
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Mast?
Second.
Second, Mr. Engel. All those in favor of excusing Mr. Hancock from this evening's proceedings, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we will excuse him this evening. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, Glenn Grisdale is here to speak to us in regards to the new comprehensive plan. Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Absolutely. May I take the stand here?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. All righty. Do I need to say my name and what my father does? Yeah, like kindergarten count now. Okay. All right. Glenn Grisdale, Bowling Green, Ohio, with Reveille. We assisted you. I think we started actually in February of 2022, and I will have to give Lisa the special code sign to advance the slides, probably, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You got it.
Right.
We can steal that.
I gotcha.
We began the process in February, and we worked with about 15 folks.
Why isn't it going down?
We should come up on the slide. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yep. No. There we go. We had a Plan Defiance committee that were made up of about 15 people. Very good cross-section of folks. We had the schools represented. We had Eric Willitzer from Defiance County Economic Development. We had Gary Butler, who was also on council at one time. He was your Planning Commission representative. We had Jeff Leonard for a little bit, and then we had Ryan come on board for the remainder of the planning process. We had Jenna, Jennifer English, Jill was a council representative. She was with us at every meeting. We had the Honorable Mike McCann. We had Melinda, who was on the team. Nikki, we had representation from Defiance College. We had Rob Lawson, who was the arts culture representative. And then we had Pastor Vinsky too, that represented the east side. And also the religious kind of community. Those folks were with us for about 12 unique meetings, and we had a variety of different comments that came through the process. So if you could slip to the next slide. We adopted a process. It was a 4-stage process in developing your comprehensive plan, in which we had community outreach throughout the entire process. We had an existing conditions and trends phase, a plan development phase, and then after we learned about what made the community tick, we had a plan strategies and implementation phase, and then of course we're in the plan adoption phase. We had 9 meetings or more throughout the process. We had plan inventory worksheets with the committee. I think most of you were on the committee. I think you guys were really good members on the committee. Didn't get upset when I had you do all the homework. We had a lot of homework, but they did plan inventory worksheets where we asked about 5 pages worth of questions in regards to all these different categories. We also had them review.
And they weren't true/false questions.
No,
required
no,
us
they
to-
were very deep questions. We also got with each one of your departments. They filled out their own questionnaires. We had your folks go through on the committee, all 15, filled out a continued relevance worksheet that looked at every one of your past plans that you have, which are plenty. I think you have. We reviewed your 2009 Access Management Plan. We reviewed your 2011 plan that Pogemeyer completed. We looked at your 2014 Park and Recs Master Plan that Beckett Rader did. We looked at your Planning and Zoning Code. We looked at your strategic plan that Kathy Lasota helped you with in 2017. We looked at your 1918 market study, the housing market study, Destination Defiance, your active transportation plan, your focus groups, your community health improvement plan, and then your DRD. We looked at all those for continued relevance with the committee, and they filled this stuff out and said, yeah, you know, the plan that we did in 2011, we accomplished these things, but there's still more to do. And some of the recommendations that were made back in those plans are no longer relevant because, one, we've changed our vision, we've changed our focus, we don't have the capacity to serve that recommendation, or we don't have any resources because, you know, some of the situations that you have with your infrastructure has redirected some of your funds for that. So we looked at all those. We also had an innovation exercise with them where we asked a variety of different questions. We got with all the different stakeholders, and we also got with the Planning Commission, and they reviewed the plan on the 19th of June. We had a huge engagement process with the public. If you want to flip the slides, we did an outreach process where we sent out the cards. They could take the survey a variety of different ways. They could take it online, they could use printed surveys, or they could take it on their computer. And we had, next slide please. We had about 837 folks that responded. There were 17 questions. We had a good cross spectrum of respondents in way of age, gender, and we asked a variety of questions. We also got with the students, next slide please, and the students completed the survey, their own survey that came up with a whole new list of ideas for us because they looked at the community differently. From that, we were able to, next slide please. Is there one more? Yeah, so that was the continued relevance. We looked at all these studies, and then we ended up, on the next slide, we ended up doing an innovation exercise with the committee, and they answered yes or no, or
Explain that process, because
Yeah, so the innovation exercise, we want to make sure that, you know, a lot of communities have grand ideas, but what we don't like have happen is, you know, I'm a military guy, I'm practical, right? You know, when we go through training, we want to make sure that we give guys, you know, a right scope and a right vision and the right leadership, but we also want to be cognizant of the resources that we have to complete the mission. And so with this innovation exercise, I wanted to make sure, you know, I asked the 15 folks on council whether or not, you know, their organization has the right resources and capacity to create Defiance 2.0. And what I meant by Defiance 2.0 was the vision of where kind of this plan was going to take you, right? And 60% said no. And then I asked the question, you know, is this community dependent upon how well our community connects to its natural resources? 90% said yes. Creating Defiance 2.0 will require that we make major changes or meaningful tweaks, right? And so half the committee was split. Some said we could, you know, we need to make major changes. The other half said we could get to Defiance 2.0 just through minor tweaks. So there was about, I don't know, 15, 16 different questions. And that kind of laid the ground rules in the basis for some of the strategies and recommendations that we made. And so that was really helpful. It really was. And the folks were really, really good, provided some good feedback.
It was fun too.
Well, it was, yeah. Because they were able to use these point-and-click technologies, right?
Those are fun.
Yeah, we sat with clickers and Glenn would throw those up there and we would click,
Yes or no?
one for yes, two for no or whatever, and then the answers would pop up there. Well, then we'd debate,
Yeah.
all right, who said yes on that one? Cause I'm not, it was a good interaction.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun. And so we took that information and put that in the hopper. And then we ended up on the next slide. Let's see. We started looking at all the other stuff too. Your population, your demographics. We looked at your community services and facilities. We got with Rob at the Park District or your Parks Department. It's Rob, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rob, okay. We looked at your housing, looked at your housing studies. We got with Erica. We got with Melinda. Adam on our team's an engineer. He got with Melinda and all the folks at the water wastewater treatment plant and all those folks. We got with Rex and zoning. Mommy Valley, Pat Etchie from, the transportation angle. And then we ended up putting it says Ontario, but putting your community into planning areas and focus areas. And so on the next slide, what we did was we split your community up into different planning areas, treating like cases alike and different cases differently. They don't fit your ward style, but some of them do, some of them are encompassed completely all in one ward or not, but we broke them up into planning areas. And then what we did was, on the next slide, we gave the reader, and the end user will likely be city council, be the planning commission. We gave you guys an in-depth understanding of that planning area and how it feels and functions in way of all those different functional categories, from land uses to transportation to environmental considerations. And then we had a planning issues, and then we have a recommendations section, which should hopefully be able to be used by the planning commission to where if you were to have a project in any one of those planning areas, you could show up and within 5 minutes be able to say, okay, here's our project, it's gonna be in this area. How does it interrelate within each one of those planning areas? And what can we get out of this development prospect in way of maybe sidewalks or something? Every development project, in my opinion, is an opportunity for you to kind of have a little ebb and flow conversation with the developer and say, we did a master plan. This focus area wants us to do these things. You want, some density bonuses, or you want to go up a few feet, or you want whatever. How about you give us something that we're looking for based upon the master plan? So all that dialogue is in this plan, and it's broken down into planning areas like that. So then, after we had the community survey, we had the student survey, we had the innovation exercise, we got with all your department heads, all that stuff. We then had another survey with the public at large, and we said, okay, you generally told us this, and we've learned that, we've learned all these things about your community. Help us frame in some strategies, right? Tell us a little bit more about how you want us to address nuisances, or maybe rentals, or parks and recs, or a whole host of things. And that's where the community preferences survey came in handy. And you can see we asked questions like, pedestrians noted a desire for improved pedestrian mobility and connectivity choices. How would you like to see this happen? Because pedestrian connectivity was a huge theme in this plan. There was a lot of folks that noted that safety in the downtown should be improved, and I think you guys are taking steps towards that. So there was a flare in here about pedestrian connectivity. We asked them why, again, they live in Defiance. We asked about failing infrastructure, programs for incentives. The biggest threat to the riverfront is lack of active recreational opportunities or poor environmental connections. Those were kind of those two things there. But from those questions, we were able to kind of lay a good basis for many of the strategies or recommendations that we made in the plan. So, next slide. From all that stuff, we were able to boil your plan into 4 different themes. Downtown renewal, there was 11 strategies and recommendations made for that theme. There were 14 themes for pedestrian, or for preservation and prosperity. 16 here, if you look at it twice, it looks like it's 116, I don't know how that happened. 16 for utilities, because your infrastructure is something that's, you know, that's here with you to stay, right? This community kind of is taking the penalty for the lead because you guys developed, you know, kind of first in Northwest Ohio. And you have a lot of infrastructure needs and requirements to bring you back up to speed and things like that. So there's 16 strategies there. And then there's that connected community. There were 20 recommendations that were kind of made in that category. And you'll see the basis for those strategies were all kind of those elements there. The meetings that we had, the planning condition surveys that we did with the steering committee, all the surveys, the stakeholder interviews, the innovation exercise, and then we overlaid it with best practices. And also our understanding of the community to support it, the resources to enable them, and the staffing to implement them. And you'll find in the back of the plan, on the next slide, are tables like this that are broken down by theme, strategy, who will be a collaborating entity to help implement it, from city council, the planning commission, the different departments or local organizations, and the time frame, either immediate, ongoing, long-term. There's also, I think, a medium term in there. And then in this category, in that column, is left open that hopefully every year we can get the planning committee back and go around the room and say, okay, what did we accomplish? Is it complete? Can we mark it at 100%? Or is it half complete? We mark it at 50%? Or, you know, we need to get rid of it because it was too pie in the sky. I don't think there's a lot of too pie in the sky in here. We kept that to a minimum. But that column would be good once a year to go through with your boards and commissions to figure out what's been done, what's not. So the next steps, hopefully tonight you'll advance it forward to approve the plan. And then we are also tasked with helping the zoning department work with the planning commission, and we'd like to get you engaged in some of the planning and zoning, the planning code and zoning code. There's some elements of the zoning code that we're tasked with updating to align with the comprehensive plan. And then we're going to work with the staff and the law director and everyone to look at parts of the code that needed to be updated since 2014 or whatnot. And there's a running list there, one of which is nuisances and things like that. So we're trying to figure out, you know, how to address those in the best way possible. So hopefully you guys will be engaged. We will engage you as much as you want to be in that process. But that's the next step. And those are some of the categories we're going to be looking at in the zoning code.
So that's good. Great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I want to thank you for your time. In fact, I want to thank you for your time. This was a great process. You were a great leader.
Yeah. No,
and I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah.
But there are two things that we really need to engage council on, as Glenn was alluding to, on the planning and zoning code pieces. And one would be nuisances, because in all honesty, frequently you bring nuisances to us that by our current code aren't nuisances. And, you know, you look at it and you go, well, yeah, that's bad, but we just don't have anything in our code that covers that. So we need to make sure that going forward, that we at all possible, with the law director's blessing, that we can have a nuisance code in place that we can all live with without being too much of restrictive government. And the other one that obviously has been an issue here recently that I think we need to talk about is signage, especially in our downtown. And so, you know, we're going to need some help with that. Mm-hmm. And what we would like to see currently, our sign code doesn't allow signs perpendicular on the front of the buildings yet. We all like perpendicular signs on the front of the buildings. They do hang out over our right of way. So we'll have to come up with a plan to occupy our right of way and all of that stuff. But that's all doable. That's all stuff we can do. We just need to get in our code. We need to have an inspection process in place for those signs so they don't fall on somebody. But those are things that we need to work through, and we're gonna need your help. We can do it on our own, and you can adopt it, but I just think it's better if we have council's involvement. As you know, we have a budget to get done here as well, so we'll be working diligently on that.
Busy last portion of the year.
Yeah. So it may require some special meetings of some sort or to work through all this if we want to get it done in a timely manner. It might also be a good project for January, February, March of next year. I don't know how critical.
The budget of the zoning.
Budget will be done in December. So the zoning and the nuisance code, yeah, definitely. And the nuisance code, in all honesty, a majority of that is stuff that we don't have to deal with in December, January, and February because it's not the growing season, so to speak.
Yeah, if you like, we can send out a questionnaire that would be, which would allow you to kind of fill in your thoughts on high-level things of any nuisances or any zoning things that you might think are issues. We deployed it for the Planning and Zoning Commission, but we could get it to you folks as well and kind of jot your thoughts, in and put it in the hopper of things to consider.
And do we have any questions for our guest, Mr. Uresti?
Yes, this is a good plan. A number of years back, the Economic Development Committee, I guess we had a conversation at this table on the business and community climate. Mm-hmm. Does this comprehensive plan address the economic and community climate in our community?
Sure, yeah. So if you go to each one of the, in the planning conditions section, it talks about the things that you're doing already in way of economic development, the incentives that you have, and the abatements that you have out, talks about that. In the planning and also in the planning conditions, we talk about some of the population and demographics, housing, and then each one of those planning areas talks about the projects that you may have out to help promote your community in way of economic development and stuff like that.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because in our discussion, I think we had 5 or 6 items. Mm-hmm. And I think in some ways you do address it. Mm-hmm. But I guess if you look at comprehensive plan and what are the subcategories underneath it, mm-hmm. The thing that we discussed was cost of doing business, mm-hmm. Regulations, mm-hmm. Quality of life initiatives, mm-hmm. business growth opportunities, okay. Incentives, mm-hmm. and then the last one, and I don't know if it addresses here or not, is brand.
Sure, it does. Yeah, if you look in the plan themes, it does talk about. Well, do we have does anybody have a copy of the plan? Oh, you put it in one of those binders? Yeah. So
Nikki did.
Yeah, I think that's somewhere in here. We talk about in the executive summary. We talk about let's see here. We talk about fresh defiance, less is more, all the resiliency and things that you're doing. So yeah, your brand is important, and the neighborhoods and the things that you choose in way of making your neighborhoods thrive by either addressing your nuisances or looking the other way. They do set and tone your brand. Sometimes communities set and tone their brand by the things that they choose not to do because they're too hard to do, And when we came on at the very beginning, we said that getting to Defiance 2.0 is going to require a little chutzpah because you've done pick the low-hanging fruit already on a lot of things. So that's all kind of baked into.
Yeah, and the biggest part with brand is that basically it's on everybody's lips. And they're basically saying almost like Defiance is a great place to live.
Right.
So in essence, what we're talking about, all the little components of the comprehensive plan, basically people would basically put it on Facebooks, basically conversations, Defiance is doing this, Defiance is doing that. Yeah. And I guess the reason why I said about the 5 or 6 areas, is kind of like the topic it, so that, I guess when I look at things, if I saw something and then everything underneath that as far as a subcategory, I have these 5 or 6 main items that addresses our community. And the 5 or 6 items that we talked about on our Economic Development Committee addresses our community. It addresses it on the economic level, it addresses it on the community level. And this is great, that plan is great, but if there was any way that you could look at that and maybe possibly say it, so if I'm sitting around talking to somebody in a restaurant or something like that, you know, they say, hey, what is the cost of doing business in Defiance? Oh, the comprehensive plan says this. Well, what about quality of life? Oh, this is the initiatives that they talked about. Or the biggest thing is the brand.
Okay,
Or the incentives.
okay,
But if there's any way you could do something in that,
Yeah.
I'm not taking away from anything, I'm just
Sure.
telling you what my thoughts are.
yeah,
I think it would be pretty good where it doesn't take the entire book to basically address what we're talking about here, that basically this can take care of it, and it's basically very understanding and people can communicate that, I think, in one-liners or the discussions that you guys finish in the plan.
sure.
So anyways, I just thought.
Yeah,
I'd put it up.
you know what, that might be good, if we could do something like that, if we could make it short, sweet, concise, it almost sounds like that would be a good cover letter. You guys could all
Right.
sign to,
Correct.
we could stuff it in the beginning of the plan, you know, like right in here under the acknowledgements, where you say you guys support the plan because it addresses these things, and we point out those categories and stuff some facts in the plan that are in here under those categories, so you can use them as sound bites.
I think it would be very good.
Okay,
And it's up to council, but I think we discussed it, but I think it might be just something that when the plan's set out that
okay.
it might be in there. Then we can address it.
We could do it that way, or it could just be a separate thing that,
Yeah,
you know,
like a cover letter or something.
yeah,
That'd be great.
they could come with it.
I
Okay.
just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, thanks for your input, really good.
Good point. Do we have any other questions for our guest? Mr. Corbett?
This is just a generic question because when I'm listening to this, it's a lot of work went into this by a lot of great people, talented people. But this is a political body that morphs into something different 10 years from now, 15 years from now. How do we keep this moving forward without another administration coming in and tearing it apart? And is it
Well, so-
doable?
It's not a lifetime comprehensive plan. There will,
I understand that, but you know, Joe was talking about something they did years ago, right?
well,
And how much got carried out, or what changed?
Well, we
at the
dropped it. Council dropped it. I dropped it because in essence, basically it lacked interest to continue. That's why I didn't pursue it. Had there been more interest from council, we would have basically continued on with the next phases. There was probably, each one of those had an area we could have discussed in every meeting as a council as a whole. But it didn't seem like the interest was there, so that just basically stopped. But it isn't that it's not important, it was important. But I think with
It still
this
is.
plan here, now, it's there. The teeth are there for it. So now we bring this back, have that as the main power source, and I think we're good.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
be
a lot
honest
of
with
what,
you, Mr. Corbett, as I said recently, I don't know whether it was our last meeting, but the economic development pipeline is full. It is full. And as 2-3 weeks since I said that last, I think we're more confident that good things will be coming to our city. And with that in mind, that comprehensive plan may have to be, and you talked about this, Glenn, may have to be reconvening that group, maybe tweaking the group, bringing in some new members. That comprehensive plan will very likely have to be adjusted just based on the economic development projects that I don't want to say
No,
that
I
are
understand.
coming. You know how this all
I
works.
understand that, but you know, in a simplistic question or point of view here, is sidewalks, different administrations enforced it, different administrations didn't. So we have this hodgepodge of connectivity that doesn't connect. And, you know, that's the concern I have. You've got this great plan. And we're a political body and it changes over time.
credit to our planning commission, credit to our engineer, credit to our planner, and credit to our city
Well
council.
deserved.
That is less of a hodgepodge than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
I don't think there's any way you can future-proof something that looks out 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I think what this plan offers that I haven't seen from a lot of the other, I guess, discussions we've had is we get into these theoretical discussions from time to time about how we want things to be or the way things should be. The plan being offered as it is, I mean, the first thing I did when we got it is flip to the back. The back is a checklist. It's a checklist of stuff that needs done. And it's a checklist that the city is going to have to accomplish. And so in the end, you're gonna choose to hit those checklists one by one, or you're not. But there is a document saying this is at least at one time what we had planned to do in the direction we wanted to take the city. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah.
I guess the hope is this plan is well constructed and it's just common sense to continue it for years. Because some of the stuff takes years to accomplish.
When we walk in here every morning, not here, into this building, we're behind. Some days when we leave, we're more behind. Some days we've caught up a little bit, which is a good thing.
Sounds depressing to me, but okay.
It has its moments.
Mr. Mast?
There's a lot of good things in this plan, and I think the only roadblocks I see for a good portion of it's gonna be money and manpower for the most part. But the other concern is some of the ideas cut such a broad swath. How do we prioritize to keep from getting mired down and at the end accomplishing nothing?
Budget,
Right. And
some of it's budgetary.
well, a lot of it, the whole thing is budgetary, unfortunately. So
Well,
we're still gonna have to prioritize which direction we head with it.
And that's the nice thing, like I said
Checklist.
about the checklist, is I realize that several of them are broad, but it gives us what we're shooting for and it allows us, you as council, to, help keep that standard up. Us as Board of Control, the rest of the workforce of the city to have that checklist in mind of, okay, every time some new idea pops in our head of, no, we wanna go this direction. Well, how does it fit into one of these? Does it, and we have to prioritize them ourselves. Glenn can't lay everything out step by step as much as we'd like it to. We still have to put the work into it, but it gives us at least a roadmap for that checklist.
And I agree with the point that you're making, which actually is kind of what Mr. Mast and Mr. Corbett are making, is it will take some effort or to keep it in front of us, to keep it, I'll say, alive and relevant, that keeps it from getting tiring and put on the back shelf, and then we wonder why, and what were we thinking when we brought this up in the first place? But it will take some effort from council and from the Board of Control to say, hey, let's revisit this, or where does this idea fall in our comprehensive plan? But I think that's a good point.
And I think, Mr. Rusty, to expand a little bit on what you were talking about on the economic development piece. I have a lot of confidence in our Community Improvement Corporation, Erica Willitzer, Paige Johnson, and a soon-to-be-named third party for moving that organization forward. There's new energy out there, and when I talk about the pipeline being full, they deserve a ton of credit for that pipeline being where it is. And I keep thinking Erica get tired, but she's been on board now for about 3 years, and I'm just not seeing it. So it's good.
Mr. Resty?
Two things. One, just to follow up with Mr. McCann just said, I forget what they're called. Mr. Mack, when you, a number of years back, Jeff Leonard basically put together 7 items and brought it before city council and wanted us to prioritize which we wanted as far as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of where our concentration was to be. And it was a good discussion. And, that would be something that if, and that could always continue to change every 2 years, a year, new things come up or whatever, new council, just to keep focus on what those interest might be in regards to council. And that might be a suggestion for yourself. But, and I'll keep thinking about what I was gonna say to you.
Call.
Oh, no, I understand it. In regards to the comprehensive plan and also economic development, when we first put together our strategic plan back in the early 2000s, it was used to basically in grants that we put out, because in essence, it basically showed those that we petitioned for money that we were serious about our community and our interests. And we've used them every time we made them differently, upgraded them or whatever. Again, new usage and filing for grants. Comprehensive plan, very complete. And again, it'll help those like Erica and the CIC in applying for grants, that this community is very serious. It's a collaborative effort, and you know, somebody's reading it and sees the big book. One thing I talked to you earlier about this either yesterday, might have been when we were at the Cat Haven.
Cat House.
Yeah. What other communities have a comprehensive plan in this area? Bryan, Napoleon. You know, they're our biggest competitors in this area for business. Do any of them have a comprehensive plan?
And I don't have an answer to that question. Some days I care, some days I don't care.
Yeah, they do.
I'm the mayor of Defiance, not the mayor of
They had
Northwest
some-
Ohio.
They had some bald guy do it for them, but it's not as good as your plan.
Good answer.
That's what I want to hear.
That was a really good answer.
But that's where where this is at, and I think that's what the importance of this plan is. And our history has shown that we do, with our people, put it to good use, and it does help. So, thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments for our guest?
Good job. Thank you.
Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I mean, I really grew into your community. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I had so much fun. The people here are great. You got a really interesting place, nooks and crannies, places to explore. You've got riverfront galore, smiles on people, optimism. It really, you know, I think it's going to be the place to be when people finally realize that they were sold a bill of goods with cheap money and false expectations. They're going to be moving back and repopulating Northwest Ohio. And you guys are going to be front and center. You really have some good people here. You really do. Now, I've been blessed to help you guys, so thank you.
Thank you.
I've reviewed the index minutes for the council meeting for September 12th, 2023. Does anyone have a motion to correct or amend the minutes as presented? If not, then I will endorse the same. Do we have any liaison committee reports or requests? Mr. Corbett?
I have a request for a study session with committee of the whole to discuss a proposal for our water and sewer rates. Next meeting, October 3rd at 7.
Right. So we have a request for
Study
session, meeting of the whole, here, 7 o'clock, our next meeting, October 3rd.
Perfect.
Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Mast? All those in favor of such a meeting of the whole next time, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Then next time we meet, we will have such a meeting. Do we have any comments from council this evening? Mrs. Crutch?
I just want to say thank you for bringing up the nuisance and the signage ideas, because I think it's really important that we are a part of that. Knowing the downtown community of what they would like to see. And of course, I know we'll have perimeters from our law director, but you know, I'll fight for some things, so. But thank you for bringing that up, because I would like to be a part of that.
You shall.
Mr. Waxler?
I brought a couple weeks ago the house 2 doors north of the
Did you hear me a little bit ago?
Yeah,
On nuisance.
well, there was a nuisance sign there, nothing happened, sign's gone.
We pushed for weeds basically on the house, which any normal person could see that there's some overgrowth going on there. We had some discussions today in-house, and I think some of the classifications for some of the weeds that we were basing that off of, I don't think the law director thought was totally enforceable. We were looking at sending a certified letter.
Oh, this is that,
Yes, the Jefferson House. So we're in the process. We're
So what you're telling me is they can just leave it that way,
uh,
as much as it's taking down
Through
everybody.
our code right now. Yeah.
I'll refer you, Mr. Waxler, to a home at the corner of what would be at the southeast corner of Washington and Arabella. Tell me the difference
Yeah,
between the one you're describing on Jefferson. And I don't mean to pick on anybody here, but that's the conundrum.
That's the
If you wanna say both of those are a nuisance, and Sean thinks that we can enforce that in a court of law, I'm all for it. I'm on board with you. But we just have to get there. It's not in our current code.
Our current code calls for noxious weeds. Noxious weeds has a very thin, narrow definition per the state of Ohio. For instance, poison ivy is not listed under noxious weeds in the
I
state of
know,
Ohio.
we've been through noxious weeds
but
for years.
poison-
I'm tired of hearing about
But
the weeds.
poison oak is.
When I was,
So-
where Mr. McMaster is
So-
sitting, we talked about.
Yeah, it's.
It's sad that somebody's gonna let property go like that and just bring everybody's around and values down, we can't do nothing
One of the
about it.
busiest streets in our city. Couldn't agree more.
And Bill Dirk and Ryan and I have looked at it from every angle, you know, maybe part of the building's crumbling, maybe we can get it, building code that angle, maybe we can, you know, get it from some other tall grass or something like that. If there's a way we can enforce it, we will. We just haven't found it yet.
Yeah. So we will continue to look.
Anyway, got chainsaw.
Can you
Any other
expand
comments?
your
Got a good lawyer?
perimeters?
And a good lawyer.
The community plan.
Yep.
We have a good lawyer, but you go in and you start doing things like that and you're at risk of,
I know.
It's just sad, it really is.
Any other questions or comments from council? On to the Board of Control. Mayor McCann.
Mr. Master, Mr. Uresti didn't say anything, but I think we had, again, a very successful spay-neuter event, program, the last 2 days. Actually, it started on Friday when folks picked up their traps, set their traps on Sunday, brought about 75 cats into the facility on Monday morning and worked from 7 o'clock Monday morning till 9 o'clock last night. Spaying and neutering, more spays than neuters this time, so the price is a little bit higher than the last time, but nothing of any significance. And all cats left this morning, and seemed to be no worse for the wear. It's a nice program for us. Again, I think we budgeted $15,000 for that. 5,000 or so went to traps, and then, you know, we were open $5,000 for both spay neuter clinics. Both of those are gonna be more in the $6,000 range, so we're gonna run $2,000 to $3,000 over budget on that. But for 2024, which I'm sure we'll wanna do that again, we should be able to budget 15,000 and be well under that amount.
Mr. Resty?
We had, I talked to people that were part of the program, and they said that our community differs greatly from many of the other communities because we had volunteers, and in other communities, they just left to do it all by themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, I commend Mr. Mass for taking a half a day of his business to basically be there, and Mayor McCann for being there. I think that was great.
And you and your wife.
Yeah, great visual, and it was enjoyable.
Yeah,
So,
it's a nice experience. I'm allergic to cats, so I try and stay outside, but it's still it's a good event. It's good to see people come out, and someday this will pay dividends, I'm sure. It's just going to take time.
Thank you.
And then the other thing was, today, Nikki Warnicki, who's still here, our city planner, and I went out to the Defiance High School and met with Mr. Jerger and about a dozen Defiance High School students, freshmen through 12th grade. This is something Nikki and I have talked about. Nikki has encouraged me. I don't want to say pushed, because it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It was just, trying to find the time. Initially, I was talking to Bob Morton when he was the principal in our schools, and then COVID hit, and then all of a sudden, Mr. Morton is our superintendent, so we met with Mr. Jerger. But I think today we laid the groundwork with 12 of the Defiance high school students, and we may still bring in a couple junior high students to just talk about, and I think we talked about it, or Glenn may have talked about it. We're trying to look through these teenagers' eyes on what they see of our city. It was so refreshing to sit there and listen to a young man who's gonna turn 18 on November 6th. November 7th is election day, and in his mind, will I be able to vote? I said, you're gonna have to call a board of elections. I don't know. It seems like he would be able to, but I don't know for sure. So we'll encourage him to reach out to the Board of Elections. He's looking at a possible career in law enforcement. That was exciting, but eventually these kids will get more comfortable around Nikki and myself, and they'll start to open up on what they see. We talked about philosophically how we are working hard on quality of life issues. We talked about drugs. We talked about streets. We talked about infrastructure. We talked about the fact that we're a charter community, and we'll educate them more on that. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I could have spent the rest of the day there, but they had classes to go to. So I just wanted to let you know that. You'll hear more about it, and we'll see how that progresses over time here.
That's good news.
It was good news. Yep. Thank you. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple things I wanted to update council on. To start with, I wanted to make you all aware that our integrated watershed improvement plan that the city has been working on for a number of years. It predates me being here, it predates Kim being here. It's something that has taken a long time. We finally got word that it has been approved by the EPA. If you remember correctly, several months ago, John Lyons came in and gave a lengthy presentation on what all that entailed. It's roughly $40 million worth of infrastructure projects over the next 20 years. So we were happy, we're excited, we've gotten this far. Now the work begins of, the timeline, looking at those projects when we have to get them done. Melinda's going to be busy working on the engineering side of that. But if I realized it was a while ago that we got that presentation, so if you would like for me to bring in some people to kind of go over that again, have a study session on it sometime, I'm open to that. I just wanted to make you aware that it was good news. We did get that final approval from the EPA on that. Secondly, as you may have noticed in the course of the last couple of days, leaves are finally starting to change color. Our city crews have been doing spot pickups. If they see leaves on the side of the road, they've been trying to get to them when they can to do leaf pickup. A full schedule for leaf pickup throughout the city will probably be forthcoming in the next week or two. So keep your eyes peeled to the city website for details on that. Then also at 9 p.m. Sunday night will be the final closing of the splash pad for 2023. If you remember correctly, about a month ago, the pool was closed down, so this Sunday will be the last time you'll be able to turn on the splash pad. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that for the winter. And then lastly, we had some questions last time around at council. I have gotten some questions from some of you in the meantime. I know you have gotten questions from residents about the downtown pedestrian safety enhancements. Because there are some questions, I wanted to bring a few people in tonight. So Melinda is here from our engineering department, obviously, to discuss some of the details of exactly what's going on. And then we also have Katie Marbaugh was willing to join us from the health department. So I have Melinda here to answer any questions on specifically what is going to happen. And then Katie, if you have any questions, can back up the why we need to do something like that for the health and safety perspective of our community. And I was gonna ask Melinda just to do a quick rundown of some of the projects you'll see happening. specifically with the crosswalk areas and things like that, and then on to the turning patterns that will take place. So take it away, Melinda.
Thank you. So just to summarize everything that's gonna happen in this project, we were tasked with looking at the Clinton Street corridor from High Street to Fifth Street. And look at what enhancements we could make to that corridor to make it safer for pedestrians. So what we came up with is we will be restricting right turns along that entire corridor on Clinton Street at all of those intersections, so all 7 intersections. We will be adding pedestrian lead phase intervals. So what that means is pedestrians will be allowed to enter the crosswalks ahead of cars being allowed to go. That'll be like a 4-second interval where they'll be able to head out into those crosswalks so that they become more visible for cars, so they do not get hit. That will happen between First Street and Fifth Street. We'll repaint all the crosswalks. We will put up lit, no right on red signs at the 2nd Street and 3rd Street intersections. And then the rest of the intersections will just get the flat panel, the white flat panel signs that say no right on red.
Hi.
Oh, are you helping her?
Oh, I'm trying.
Okay. And what else? There'll be a few push buttons that have to be added. Since we're adding that pedestrian lead phase interval, we have to add some additional head pull push buttons at some of the locations. Not all of them, but some of them, we had to get spacing a little bit easier for ADA accessibility. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, a lot.
Oh, what did I miss?
Wasn't much, actually.
You don't wanna know.
Okay.
We could reiterate though, even, from the payment or from how we're going to fund this side of things is, the state of Ohio, ODOT has looked at the plans. They
Yes.
have agreed this is what needs to happen in your downtown for safety,
Yes.
and they're funding it at 90% for us.
Yeah, so we submitted a safety grant application to ODOT. They reviewed it, obviously saw that there was a need, and yes, agreed to fund this at 90%.
Okay.
So it starts at High Street, Melinda. And no turn on red there, and
And at River,
correct.
and at First, Second,
We
Third, Fourth.
currently don't have turn on red on River.
Right.
You cannot turn right.
Correct.
Right.
Coming off
Right.
the river.
You could if you were coming out of, let's say, by Balchem, right? If you were coming eastbound to
Yes.
Clinton Street, you
Oh,
could theoretically
so
turn right
you're
there.
saying eastbound, what we call West River, will no longer be able to turn right, and that makes sense,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
We're doing, my question's, left-hand turn at 2nd and
Mhm.
Clinton.
Sure. So the northbound left turn onto West Second Street will be eliminated, and the reason that's being eliminated is because we are giving the pedestrians that lead phase interval to get out into the intersection ahead of the cars being able to get the green light to go. Because we are doing that, the left turn, the southbound left turn to go to East Second is gonna move from at the beginning of the cycle till the end of the cycle. And when we do that, if you were northbound and you wanted to turn left, right? And you got a yellow light, you're automatically gonna think that the opposing traffic is also getting a yellow light at the same time. So you could gun it, right? Well, theirs is gonna be green because theirs is gonna stay green to allow the movement, their left turn movement to clear. So we would be having traps or accidents happening between vehicles.
I get
That's
all
why we
that,
need
I get
to-
all that, the merchants downtown, a lot of the people are complaining that we're doing away with all left-hand turns, and I gotta agree with them, if you don't turn left there,
Third Street.
exactly,
Mhm.
but if you don't get Third Street, then there's 3 blocks of people on the left side you can't get to unless you go down and around and come back around on the right.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's really fair to the businesses there either.
Melinda, do you happen to remember I know I'm putting you on the spot. Do you remember from the traffic count? I know that we did a traffic count on that turn. What what the frequency was like, just ballpark.
Frequency
Of that left
was, like 8 to 10 cars an hour.
Okay.
And that was peak hour,
Yeah,
so that was
peak
the
hou- peak-
maximum.
Peak hour
Right,
compared to the opposite way coming down,
oh,
which is,
there's no comparison.
yeah. A substantial
Well,
amount
I
of
get
people.
all that, I
It-
totally
it-
understand all that.
Some people will be inconvenienced
Yes.
by this to start with. There
Yes.
is no doubt about that, and I've said that to some of you.
Not just
There are
that
going to be
left turn.
complaints, there are going to be people that feel inconvenienced about this, but in the end, it's about the safety of people walking downtown.
Right.
Kim was coming to council tonight and witnessed someone turning right and almost hitting a kid on a skateboard. Kid fell off the skateboard. It's happening.
She
daily.
did, I mean, she didn't even, she just kept going. And he had the walking, he was in the right, and
It's still gonna happen. I mean, we're not gonna
I-
stop it all.
I
People don't
realize
pay
that,
attention.
We're trying, we're
Yeah.
trying to
We're
put
trying.
in safety
Yeah.
measures where we can.
In the end, that's
Yeah.
what it's about, is making our we've put a lot of money, but we are putting money into the downtown through the facade program. We have the Dora district, we're continuing to have events downtown, we want people in our downtown. We have to make it safer to walk if we want those businesses to be open, if we want all these things to happen, we have to make it safer for people to take their kids down there. And that's the whole end game for all of this, is to just, in the end, make it safer for people to walk around.
Mr. Engel?
Yeah, we got a couple questions. Going to High Street, going across the bridge where you got there by River Road and High Street, that is kind of a cluster now because sometimes you'll have one that's green, red, and that just backs everything up there. Is that gonna be changed somehow as far as timing?
The timing isn't necessarily gonna change, other than adding that pedestrian lead phase timing. As we implement this and as we watch it and as we see how things are working, we know that there's likely going to need to be additional modifications to that signal timing. So we'll watch it, we'll see what we can do and try to make things flow as best we
Downtown,
can.
is that gonna be changed as far as timing going north or south, or you just gonna wait
The
and see
total,
things?
the total timing
happen.
for the phasing will remain the same, so we're stealing some of the timing for the pedestrian lead phase. But
Would it be better, would it have any advantage of maybe shortening that time and still letting the people walk across and give them that same time? Cause a lot of people think it's a long time as far as waiting to go east and west.
At
Well,
times
north
it
and
is.
south, you
Yeah,
can
at
go through
times
town
it
pretty
is.
good.
Sure. We'll watch it all and see what makes sense. And by watch it, I mean, we're gonna have to give it a year,
I understand that.
to really see how people are gonna react and see who's gonna take an alternate route and see how things are gonna go. But yes, we will
Okay,
watch it.
okay.
Because
One other
alternate
thing.
routes will form. And
Yes.
so we will have to be cognizant
Yes.
of that too, throughout the
One
town.
other thing, going east and west where there's left-hand green turn.
Yeah.
The signal, is that gonna stay there?
Yes,
Okay. And then going north and south where there's a green arrow, they'll still be able to do that.
yeah, the only place we're eliminating the north is
South
the
is right there.
northbound
Right, by
left
the-
turn
yes,
on Second
right,
Street. Yes,
Okay,
that's right.
okay, thanks.
I've thought about these left turns a lot, Mr. Waxler, even before you brought it up. And I've peppered Melinda with questions and ideas and can we do this and can we do that? She always has an explanation as to why we can't. We come back to that, especially the one at Second, since we're putting the left turn for southbound traffic at the end of the cycle instead of the beginning. And the fact that northbound traffic, we've all gunned it, as you said.
Right.
When
Real
that light
technical
changed
term.
to caution and almost every night when I go home, turning from Clinton onto West High. And I just don't see a way around it. I believe that I will be going through town and forget my phone and want to come back to the office and go to turn left on West Second and can't because it's been eliminated. So I'll have to go up, turn right and go around that way. And I'll do that once or twice. And then I either won't forget my phone, which I forget my phone all the time, so that's not gonna change. But I believe I'll change. My son-in-law just changed jobs. He was working in Napoleon, now he's working in Paulding. He said the other day, well, I've only gotten in my car and headed towards Napoleon 3 times and realized, nope, wrong direction, and, I had to turn around and head back towards Paulding. So we're creatures of habit.
And I think,
But the interest here is pedestrian safety. And I guess especially when we look at downtown, we have to ask ourselves this question. Is our downtown for cars or is it for pedestrians? And I think it's for people. And we have to keep them safe.
I agree. If they was open downtown, we'd have more people downtown. I keep going back to that. Cause the stores just ain't open and you'd be afraid to go down there.
Work on that.
That's frustrating to me.
Yep.
Much of we wanna put more and more money downtown and nobody wants to be open. I mean, you can go to restaurants or the coffee shop, but that's any night. Outside of that, you have
But we'll
nothing.
keep trying.
Yeah.
And in regards to that, I've been to a lot of communities that most of the downtowns are not open on Mondays. I mean, it's everywhere.
Mondays, we're never open. We're never open.
But that
I've
could
been
change.
down there
That could
Tuesdays,
change.
Wednesdays.
You-
Yeah.
Maybe we need to change the paradigm. We need people to feel safe going downtown. You and I, Mrs. Crutch, need to be safe taking our grandchildren in our hands and going downtown. Mrs. Sprague, Mr. O'Donnell need to feel safe taking their children in hand and going downtown. And until we do, we're not going to do that. But when we do, we will begin to demand that these stores stay open. And if they don't, we'll shop somewhere else. And when I say, well, why'd you buy that there? Well, they were open. And it's hard to argue with Amazon. They're open 24/7 and deliver the next day, but they aren't local.
You're stealing all the health department's thunder on the
Yes.
safety side.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Just throwing that out there.
That's true.
Is there a disclaimer here that we haven't talked recently?
It's fine.
Kate, would you like to touch on a few points just
I
from
can.
the safety side of things?
and I think we'll do education too, right? The health department's gonna
Yes.
help us with
Yeah.
education outreach for implementation as well.
So I'm Katie Marbaugh. I'm a public health nurse with Defiance County Health Department. I'm the traffic safety coordinator for Defiance County. So we have a coalition, it's called Defiance County Safe Communities. It's made up of law enforcement, the health department, Maumee Valley Planning Organization, and then fire and rescue, and then a couple other agencies or engineers. So the coalition, we review all fatal crashes in the county to see what we could have done to prevent that crash. That's what the grant funding is for. And then with the goal is to reduce and eliminate those fatalities. Recently, we've been looking at serious injury crashes. So we've had, since January 2018, 27 pedestrian crashes. 10 of those occurred last year. 5 of those were in this downtown corridor. So that was a pretty significant increase. October is National Pedestrian Safety Month. So part of this coalition work is to educate the public on different safety initiatives. We'll focus on pedestrian safety, just like last week we focused on child passenger safety. So we have lots of resources available. We will put out, last year we put out with Defiance City Police and the DDVB a pedestrian safety video, which happened downtown, and we filmed it downtown, and we had 2 near misses walking across some of the crosswalks. We had to have the police stop traffic in those 2 instances while we had the right of way as pedestrians, and it occurred with a police officer, with the police chief right there in front in uniform. So it happens all too often, and pedestrian safety usually only becomes an issue if a pedestrian's hit. And we don't want to be in a community where we only do something because an injury or a fatality happened. We want to be that proactive community to make our community safer. Being a walkable community, it improves safety for pedestrians. People will find those alternative routes, but there's personal, physical, environmental benefits. Increasing the walkability can lead to healthier lifestyles. The downtown, if you're more walkable, it becomes quieter with traffic. And if it's quieter, people want to be out and enjoy the cleaner streets, the safer streets, and the quieter streets. There will be more social and community engagement, becoming a more vibrant, resilient, and livable environment. So that's where you kind of just want to increase that walkability and that pedestrian safety. So our role as the health department and the Safe Communities Coalition would be to educate the public on these changes, the whys, and kind of feel out that resistance. You don't have to be the ones giving the whys because we have the data to back up our whys. We have our safe active transportation, which one of the questions on this was, why do you not feel safe walking or biking in your community? And the 33.9% of our community members said dangerous and heavy traffic. And another part of that safe active transportation is like, do you even feel comfortable walking in your community? 36% said no. We want people to feel safe and we want people to be out in the community. So this is something we could promote. We have a whole new division at the health department, which is health promotion. So we want to be out in the community doing this. So that would be our role.
Any questions from the why side of things?
I just have a quick comment. I think personally for me, I think this is a good change and there's gonna be some adaptability and people are gonna have to get used to it. But I think, in my opinion, we have two options for downtown, and that's either we reclaim our downtown from traffic noise and high traffic patterns, or we let it slide. And frankly, I'm not in favor of letting it slide. I think we need to claim it back. I think this is a great step in that direction to get our downtown back. And like the mayor said, if we change it and they see more people downtown, then people will say, hey, let's open up for these people. So
Maggie and the Meeks told me they will be open the night of the Rib Fest, so Mrs. Sprague and I are working at the same gate, so I'm guessing we're gonna be eating rolls and drinking an adult beverage.
Sounds good. That's a rough diet.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So, we don't have the legislation for this to put in front of you tonight, but I wanted to head this off and have these types of conversations before we just put a piece of legislation in front of you. That was kind of the reasoning for bringing them here and being able to have this discussion. And with that,
No.
well,
I just want,
That's
so
all I
again, as I mentioned a minute ago, I have been peppering Melinda with questions for the last couple of months. Poor thing comes in my office every morning about 7:30 and all she's there to draw a little hot water to make her tea. And I have a whole list. And so if any of you have questions, call her and ask her, or email her and ask her, and she'll get right back with you. But as Mr. Mass says, I believe this is something we need to move forward on. Now you're done.
now you're, thank you. Now I'm finished.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Mr. President, unfortunately, after hearing all the inspiring insights and recollections from these gentlemen, I'm legal. I just do the boring and depressive stuff.
We're glad you're here. So.
Ms. Sprague?
I'm with Sean, I don't have much either, other than we're working on budgets, which can be depressing too. They make it fun and they have a good vision. Everyone has a good vision for the city and it's stressful, but yet enjoying, so it's good.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
We do have 4 items of legislation for consideration this evening. The first one is a second reading is amended.
Yep. Second reading as amended, an ordinance vacating the right-of-way between lots 53 through 65 in the Ottawa Terrace addition to the City of Defiance and East Side Park as amended.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, this is the alley located behind the properties on the south side of Hague Street and right just north of East Side Park. This is after one of you, I believe Mr. Hancock, had moved to amend to add some language at our last meeting. City engineer has noted the presence of utilities, electric utilities inside this right-of-way. However, that electric utility company retains maintenance and access easements throughout part of that right-of-way, and the property owners should be aware of that. And if you were to go ahead and vacate this right-of-way, those property owners would, of course, take their portion of this right-of-way subject to those easements. Again, we're still in the second of the 3 required readings with this amended language. So therefore, the motion to suspend the rules and call the question is not available to you tonight. Our recommendation is to let consideration of this matter lie.
Do we have any questions or concerns in these regards? Mr. Mast?
Motion to let this lie.
So we have a motion to let lie. Second, Mr. Engel. All those in favor of letting this issue lie for this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Right. We will let this lie until next time.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing the renewal of a contract with the Defiance County for reimbursement of expenses incurred to provide legal services to indigent defendants prosecuted in municipal court under municipal ordinances.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Mr. President, every year the county receives a share of funding from the state of Ohio for public defender services. And in 2012, the city and the Board of Commissioners for the county entered into agreement into how those funds will be allocated. This legislation merely reaffirms that agreement for another year, 2024. The municipal court will then appoint and pay local counsel, sometimes not local anymore, from these funds. And passage of this ordinance will ensure that we as a city meet our 6th and 14th Amendment obligations to provide counsel for any jailable offense.
Do we have any questions in these regards for Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Rusty?
If no questions, motion to suspend and call.
If we have no questions, we have the motion to suspend and call. Second, Mr. Waxler?
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Engel? Motion to adopt.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast?
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, a resolution adopting the Defiance Comprehensive Community Action Plan.
Mr. Mack?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So earlier tonight, we heard from our consultant Glenn about this comprehensive plan that we've been working on for a number of months. We now ask you, council, to approve that plan, and in backing it by passing this ordinance, we'd be able to integrate that into our policy making and start to look at it year in and year out in the budget cycles as priorities for the city of Defiance. Because the one expert witness I have brought tonight hasn't had a chance to speak, if you have any questions, any further questions on the plan, I would yield to our city planner, Nikki Warnicki. Do we have any questions for Ms. Warnicki?
Come on.
No, I know you're rude, no.
I think it's worth mentioning, Nikki did bulldog this, so Glenn talked about the questionnaires and questionnaires. Well, Nikki was the one that was calling us and poking us and saying, hey, you didn't have this done, or look at that question again, because your answer really didn't make sense, Mike. And so, is that
I got a couple of those too.
Yeah.
So you got educated while you was.
Yeah.
Nikki does a great
Good job,
job at
Nikki.
educating us on city planning every chance she gets.
How about that we just say job well done, we won't ask mask or anything.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
Good job.
No further question, no suspending call.
Mr. Waxler with a motion to suspend call.
Second?
Second, Mrs. Crutch.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crotch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
And Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, sir.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Corbett.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mrs. Crotch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
And Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
With that, this resolution is adopted. And lastly,
First reading by caption only, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates and determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Ms. Sprague.
This is just a routine resolution by the county auditor's office to accept the necessary tax levies. So you've probably seen this form previously, but just a routine.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Sprague?
No further questions, most suspended call.
Motion to suspend call, Mr. Corbett.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Crutch?
Yes. Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Crutch. Second, Mr. Waxler.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
With that, this resolution is also adopted. Before we adjourn for the evening, did we have any citizens' concerns that wish to be shared? Without any, do we have a motion to adjourn for this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast. All those in favor of adjourning for this evening and reconvening next Tuesday at 7, say aye.
Aye.